the enemy comes in like a flood.
Hey, it's Akurios once again, and I'm back at you with another video. And we're still on the high series. Last time we did a video and we tackled the background vocals, and I showed you my process and how I went about mixing them. And thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you so much for giving your time to get back to me and ask questions about it. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Today we're going to be looking at, like I mentioned last time, the bass and the guitar. We're going to touch the bass guitars and the acoustic guitars. I say bass guitars because, as we all know now, there are two bass tracks, the same performance, the same recording, but I duplicated the bass track, and we'll look at that in a bit now. And then, if we have time, we're also going to touch on the electric guitars. I hope we do because I'm trying to breeze through in less than 10 minutes. So time me now. All right. Okay, so and if you haven't listened to the song yet, if you haven't listened to the song from beginning to end and enjoyed it for what it is, music, please go ahead to my Facebook, my Instagram, my Twitter, my everywhere, YouTube. Look for the video, look for the links to download, to stream, and all that, and go ahead and do just that. All right, so let's see what's going on here. All right, so we'll start with the bass. We have two channels here representing the same recording, the same bass recording, the same bass performance. And I'm just going to go ahead and bypass all the processing I have on both of them. In case you don't know, on Pro Tools, that's the DAW I'm using. All you have to do is just hold down Control or Command on Mac and just click the plugin, and then it bypasses. Okay, and I also bypass the processing I have on the bus. That's the bass group right here, and I'll show you what's going on there in a bit. But before all this, let's listen to the mix and see what the bass is doing. Listen to what the bass is doing in the mix before we dig in. Okay, so that's the sound of the bass in the mix. Now let's go and see what's going on the channels directly. So we bypass the plugins again. And two tracks. Why did I duplicate the recording? Because I want to treat each one differently. Because I'd like to address one as just the low frequency or the low frequency content of the bass recording, and I'd like to address the other as the high frequency content of the bass recording, because I've figured that that's one of the ways, if not the only way, that's one of the ways to have the bass poke out in the mix and be present from beginning to end. So I don't just want the bass to be coming in with a low frequency here and there in the chorus, in the verse at some points. I want it to be present. I want the low end and the high end, the mids to be present from the beginning of the song to the very end of the song, because I want it to have life. I want it to have the low end. I want it to hold down its own throughout the mix. And that's why I'm treating each frequency band, the low frequency band and the higher frequency band, differently. And I'll tell you what I'm doing here. Okay, so on this one, let's call this bass DI. And this one, we'll call it bass amp. So on the bass DI, what I have here is one of my favorite EQs. That's the Renaissance EQ from Waves. And remember, I talked about this EQ. I love the sound of this EQ. I love how it sounds when you boost with it, and also when you cut with it. It's lovely. So what I'm doing here basically is rolling off all the high end. I'm rolling off all the high end all the way down to 162 hertz. And I'm using a gentle slope, as you can see here. Now, you don't want to use a sharp, abrupt stroke. You want it to be not more than 6 dB or 12 dB per octave, if at all you're going to go that high. So this is just a gentle slope rolling off all the highs all the way to 162 hertz. You can use any EQ. It doesn't have to be the Renaissance bundle, but I just like the sound of this EQ and I like using it. Okay, so let's listen to the bass recording dry. Now you can tell that it's a nice recording. It's a nice sounding bass. There's no problem with that at all. It just needs to be, of course, compressed to tame the transients a little bit and then add some coloring to it so that it's a little bit saturated. And that's what I wanted to do. It doesn't require much processing at all. And you can hear that from how the raw signal sounds. So let's activate the EQ and see what's going on here. Bypass. Okay, so we have that. And then I'll just go ahead and also bring in the bass amp. Now, let me point out something here. When you duplicate a recording or an audio signal, what you're going to have is just straight up more signal, loudness. That's all. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a difference, diversity. We're looking for a very clear disparity in the processing on both channels. And that's what we're going for. So I'll activate this EQ and then, but before then, let's see what's going on the bass amp. So here we have an amp. Now I'm using the GTR amp, GTR from Waves, and I'm just using the activator preset. And on the activator, that's from the bass. That's the second one on the list here, activator for the bass preamp. Now, back to activator, please. Okay, so I just wanted to give it an additional amp sound. I wanted it to sound like an amp, like it was going through an amp. Okay, so let's activate that and see, activate the activator and see what, and hear how it sounds. I keep saying see, but well, I know you get the point. You actually have to use your ears and hear what the difference is. So let's listen. Bypass. Of course, there's more gain, but you can also hear that the low end and the whole sonic characteristics of the bass has changed. All right, so the next plugin I have here is the same Renaissance EQ, but this time I'm doing exactly the opposite from what I did in the first bass track, the bass DI. So what I'm doing here is I'm using a high pass filter and I'm rolling off everything to around the same point, but this time it's around 150 hertz, 150 hertz actually. And the slope, once again, is gentle. You want to use a gentle slope. Don't use 12 or 18 dB per octave or higher. Just use a gentle slope. 6 dB per octave is enough. 6 dB per octave is enough. Make it as gentle as possible because you want the bass sounding natural. You don't want to introduce some artifacts into it that are going to make it to sound like something artificial. You want it to sound natural and you don't want it to sound cut off. All right, so let's engage it and listen. Bypass. So you can hear that I'm rolling out the low end all the way to 150 hertz, 150 hertz, and I want the bass amp to give me higher frequencies, the mids and the high frequencies, and I want the bass DI to give me the low end. That's what we're achieving here. So I'm treating it as the low end of the bass, and I'm treating the bass amp as the high end and the mids of the bass. It's the same recording. All right, so together they sound like this. Okay, all right. So now what's happening in the bus now? In the bus here, we have a compressor because I want to glue the bass, the both tracks based on their processing together. I don't want them to sound in and out here and there, the frequency scattered all over the place. I want the compressor to tame the transients a little bit and then glue both signals together. So we have cooperation and togetherness going on there. Okay, so I have a Wave CLA 2A here, and I'm doing some compression. My peak reduction is around 60, just shy of 60, and then the gain reduction or the gain knob here is a little over 40. All right, so let's listen to the compression. I'll take it out. Now, some of the things you need to look out for or listen for when using compression. Number one, listen to the low end and the high end. All right. Now, in the low end, are you still hearing some instability and chaos and shakiness? You shouldn't. The compressor has to tame all the instability and all the jumping about of the frequencies here and there and control the sound. That's one. On all the bands, on the low frequencies, on the mids, and on the high frequencies also. And another thing you need to listen for is the transients. The transients is the bass poking out too much and sounding very, offensive. Is there any frequency that was, jumping out and almost pinching your ears? Now, you need to listen for that and make sure the compressor is taming such. All right? Okay, let's go back to the group processing. Now, the second plugin we have here is the Slate VMR. A fantastic channel strip from Steven Slate. And I don't have much going on here. I'll just activate it. What I have here is a preamp. I like to use the Neve 1073 or any of its emulations on bass and vocals. And I have the gain, the virtual drive, just at the middle here. And then the trim, I'm not doing any trimming. It's at 0. And then the EQ follows. And then we have a sonic enhancer, revival, just a touch of the thickness and a little more of the shimmer. And then we have a trimmer to tone down the final output just a little bit. And I'll bring them in one by one so we can hear exactly what each one is doing. All right, so let's play. Okay, that's the final sound of the bass, everything together. But let me disable the last three plugins here, last three modules here, and just have the preamp. Let's listen for what the preamp is doing exactly. Now, I'm sure you noticed that the bass already has some natural or original bite and saturation, drive, distortion, just a little bit on it, even before all the processing. But I also wanted to increase that a bit and add the flavor of the FG73, of the Neve 1073 module. That's why I'm using this. All right, so let's listen to what the equalizer is doing. This is a custom series equalizer from Slate. Lovely EQ too. Bypass. Lovely. I also love to boost on this particular EQ. It has a lovely sound, nice sounding equalizer, the custom series equalizer from Slate Digital. Now, what am I doing here? I have a boost at 100, just about 2 dBs, shy of 3 dBs. I have a boost at 600 too, and that's just about 4 dBs of boosting at 600 hertz, because I love the sound of bass at 600 hertz. It brings out the mids of the bass, that natural sounding mid frequencies of the bass. 600 hertz, lovely. And then I have a boost at 4 kilohertz. Now, why am I boosting 4 kilohertz? I'm boosting 4 kilohertz because I want the sound of the fingers playing the bass to come out. It gives it that natural feel. I want to hear the sound of the strings, the sound of the finger against the strings. It gives it that natural professional sound, which I like. All right, that's 4 kilohertz, a boost of 8 dB. Sorry, that's around 6 dB. And then I have the highs. I'm boosting 10 kilohertz, just shy of 2 dB. That's 1.3 dB of 10 kilohertz for that air. Okay, now let's move to the sonic enhancer revival. Let's listen. Very subtle. I'm just boosting the thickness, the lower frequencies of the sonic enhancement, just a little bit, just shy of 4. And then we have the shimmer at around 10, because I love the sound of the high frequency saturation that revival introduces to the bass. And all this is just being trimmed a little bit by the trimmer module. And that's just shy of 0, just about 0.4. That's what it's taking out, so it's not too loud. Okay, now together, everything sounds like this. Lovely. Now, but when mixing, you cannot mix in isolation. I'm only soloing these because I want you to hear how the bass sounds and see each step I'm taking. and see exactly what's going on in each individual plugin and module, and listen for exactly what it is introducing, exactly what the plugin or the module is introducing to the audio signal. That's why it's in solo. But usually you would want to hear exactly what the mix interpretation or what the sound is doing for you in the mix. You cannot solo and mix at the same time. You cannot mix only the bass and then forget about how it sounds in the mix. You want to know how it sounds in the mix, all right? So let's listen to the mix and see what's going on. Hear what's going on.
Lift you high, higher, higher. I cannot worry, the king that does good. I lift you high. I bless your name. Oh, I bless your holy name. Today, tomorrow, and forever, Lord. I bless your name. Jesus, you're too good, oh. Ooh, yeah.
Now let's listen to the bass or what the bass is doing in a calmer section of the song. Let's start from this refrain.
When the enemy comes in like a flood, the Lord will raise a standard against him. When he throws temptations at you, Yahweh is on his throne. Nobody can question his authority. Yeah.
Okay, sounds lovely, and I'm sure you love it too. So take these tips as something you can also incorporate into your mixing, into your bass mixing, and I'm sure it'll help you. So if you have any questions, if you have any confusion, if there's anything you want me to clarify, if there's anything you're not very clear on, feel free to ask me a question. Drop a comment in the comment section, and don't forget to like and share the video, and I'll see you later. So from Akurios here, I'm out.
When the enemy comes in like a flood, the Lord will raise a standard against him.